It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We got on the telephone line this morning. Congressman French Hill joins us again. French, welcome back, sir.
Paul, it's great to be with you. Thanks for the invite.
Yes, sir. Hey, I want to start with the fact that this is the 17-year anniversary of the September 11, 2001 terror attacks on New York and the Pentagon. And I just, where were you? I mean, a lot of people ask that. You know, where were you on September 11, 2001?
At 7:46, I was driving between Bentonville, Arkansas, and Bella Vista, Arkansas, to go to my first meeting with the FDIC on a bank acquisition up at Bella Vista of a failed bank there. And I remember vividly hearing the news story that a small plane had clipped the antenna on Tower 1. And, of course, that's not what happened, but that's, as I was driving along, that's what the news report was.
Wow. And I was just saying last hour how much this event 17 years ago changed the country, the mentality of the country. Seems like, forever. Lots happened in 17 years.
Well, it's amazing. First, I want to say my salute to the families who lost somebody on 9/11, a first responder or somebody in one of the attacks. I lost a very good friend of mine I worked with at the Senate Banking Committee. Neil Levin was our counsel on the Banking Committee, and he had been named the head CEO of the Port Authority, and he was up in the windows on the world that day. And I think about him every year. He left his family behind. Yeah, it's changed our whole focus, and it's been devastating to see Islamic terrorism brought to the shores of America and brought to the shores of Europe, and it's changed our whole defense posture since that fateful day.
Yeah, it certainly has. I want to talk just a little bit about what you've been doing in Washington, D.C., and one of the things, that really stuck out to me, there's this program called the Congressional App Challenge. And first of all, tell us a little bit about that. What's the Congressional App Challenge?
Well, it follows on about 30 years ago. Congress wanted to encourage arts, and they had an art contest for all 435 congressional districts from high school students, and the winners from each district hung their art in the Capitol. And it's beautiful. You see it as you walk through the tunnel of the Capitol. So to flash forward to about 3 years ago, they wanted to encourage coding for high school students and encourage STEM activities, so they created the Congressional App Challenge. And last year, it's really grown. We had 75 applications submitted over the last couple of years, so it's really grown in our high schools, and we're encouraging our high schools to submit apps. And one of our winner last year, Ann Lee at Central High, went on to compete in the Nationals and was recognized in Washington.
And that's what I thought was interesting. This, Arkansas Ann Lee, her app specifically was a car check app to help parents not forget to take their children out of the car. And this is a tragedy, a potential tragedy that has actually happened and hit home right here in Arkansas. And I thought, wow, what a great idea to have an app to say, to remind parents to not leave their kids in the car,
Well, this is what I love about kids, because they're unfiltered when they're thinking about art or thinking about coding for an app. They don't have all the clutter a lot of us older folks have when we're thinking about thinking creatively about solving a problem, finding a solution. And so these kids are looking at everyday issues and looking at their affection, having grown up with a digital world, and looking for an easier way to accomplish a task. And in this instance, think about the kids that might be saved because of it. She's had a lot of interest in her app. She's a remarkable young woman.
We're talking with Congressman French Hill. Let's talk about the economy. What are your thoughts on? You got the unemployment rate of young Americans is doing good. You've got excellent GDP growth, looking like, according to some, predictions, it's going to get even better. What are your thoughts on this, Congressman French Hill?
Well, Paul, look, just in the last few hours, we've had President Obama trying to take credit for the faster economic growth, and I just find that really preposterous. During the last couple of years of President Bush, when we slumped into recession and then had the crash, and then all 8 years of President Obama, you had economic growth at 1.8% average for that period. That's the lowest since World War II. It was a very bad, anemic recovery. And part of that was the trillion-dollar cost and complexity of the Affordable Care Act, cutting people's work hours back in the Affordable Care Act, putting on new regulations across all sizes of business, condemning business, passing the Dodd-Frank Act, which hurt loans for families and businesses and for individuals. So I think President Trump does deserve credit for the faster economic growth. When you see the removal of regulations, billions of dollars of costs removed in regulatory burden at the federal level by this president and by congressional action, as well as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. These have spurred economic growth and brought jobs back to the U.S. and created new opportunities. Plus, people are not talking down business. Trump, as a business guy, is out talking up business. So I really think it's impressive to see that we've now averaged 3.1% in the last 18 months, had this recent quarter just over 4%. The Atlanta Fed thinks we may get another quarter over 4%. And I just would say to listeners, those are not trends, but if we have a trend that has economic growth over 3%, that's excellent, really good. And it allows us to have the resources we need in our federal government, and that means that people are going to see higher wages and more job opportunities.
You are exactly right. And then, then you have small business optimism. As it's at a record high. I mean, people just feel good about going to work. And so it's just, really, really exciting times. And, we need to continue this. Don't need to go back to the old policies. We need to continue with these policies and, even better policies in the future.
Right. I mean, the Fed has been slowly raising interest rates. They've got a plan to slowly normalize rates from the absolute ridiculous levels that they stayed too low, in my view, too long after the crash based on the Fed's easing policy. I think they should have begun a slight increase earlier, but nonetheless, they're doing it. And we're seeing their timing on that's important because we're now seeing robust wage growth. We've seen the fastest wage growth for Americans in this last reporting period that we haven't seen in a decade. Mm-hmm. So people's wages are going up. I know the opposition political party claims they're not, but they are. And so I think, again, that's because productivity is gaining.
I heard somebody say, well, first of all, the Democrats want to undo the tax cut, the tax legislation from last year. But it's I heard, I can't remember who it was. It might have been a fellow talk radio host, but they were saying, the Democrats called the tax cut crumbs, but now they want their crumbs back. They want to undo what has been done here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They have they have nothing to run on this fall, and all they're talking about doing is shutting down law enforcement on the border, having a $32 trillion Medicare for all program, raising taxes on business, taking the tax cuts away from families. I mean, it just is nonsensical, is my only response on that.
Okay, so Congressman French Hill is with us. Tell me about the Golden Fleece Award. I understand your office gives out these Golden Fleece Awards. What are they?
Well, I do it every month. I find someone out in the federal government that's misusing our taxpayer dollars and point it out. And the reason for pointing it out is to try to get policy to change. People go, well, why do you make fun of somebody who's done something dumb, spending a bunch of money incorrectly or making a mistake or even losing money? You should be stopping it. Well, part of stopping it in a legislative environment, in a big, complicated government, is to point it out and to get the IG and the General Accountability Office engaged in trying to correct the behavior and getting it changed in law. So the Golden Fleece Award is handed out to the worst performer of the month who's fleecing our pockets from our tax dollars. I was inspired by my old senator from Wisconsin, Bill Proxmire, back in the 70s and 80s, handed out the Golden Fleece when I was a young staffer on the banking committee back in 1983. I used to get a big laugh out of it every month. And so, by golly, I brought it back when I got elected. It's a great way to communicate poor decision-making.
So this month's, I understand, was the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services for making...
Right, CMS.
Yeah, go ahead.
CMS is who is the federal Department over Human Services that oversees the Medicare and Medicaid services. So there's trillions of money flowing through that joint. And, well, back in 2014, I read an audit report that just was released a couple of months ago that says they spent $434 million to qualified health plan issuers that weren't eligible. And then they had another $500 million in improper financial assistance payments for enrollees without the right documentation. So there's $1 billion right there of mismanagement.
Wow.
And this is what they do every day. You know, Paul, that's the issue. Look, this is their mission. This is their core job. And yes, there are millions of people that are receiving the benefits of Medicare for our elderly or Medicaid for our poor. That's true. And they're big programs. But this is their main core mission. To find that kind of oversight in 1 year is shocking when we have $20 trillion in debt.
Yeah, that's it certainly is a true statement there. Well, Congressman Frenchell, I appreciate you so much.
Paul, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir, and you have a great day.
Talk to you soon.
All righty. Folks, I want